Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Douglas. So I guess I should come back.
We're always here.
Yeah, because you're every day. So tonight is kind of the second half of an invitation-only meeting that happened back in November 20th. A handful of the people in the room tonight were part of the core team, so they have a lot of the logistics to put on that workshop. We'll get into all that stuff later, but this part is the public listening session. So this is when we were hoping that we would fill the room standing room only with people who were excited about the work that we did. Because a lot of effort went into it, and it was an 8-hour day, essentially an 8-hour think tank, right? A lot of ideas came up, a lot of suggestions, a lot of rethinking things. Some are free, and we can do on our own time. Some are going to be bigger projects that we're going to be looking for grant monies. Part of the MVP program that we'll talk about tonight. There's the second half once the town gets certified as an MVP community, that they can then be eligible to apply for action grants. Sorry. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
All right. So with that being said, a little bit of background. It's a state-run grant program. It's designed to support cities and towns. It was enacted in 2016 by Charlie Baker. The planning process includes the workshop, which I just touched on. That was what we did back on November 20th with the town employees, municipal employees, some stakeholders, private, public, state agencies, a very diverse group. The listening session, that's what we're doing tonight. We created a report out of that workshop. That has been drafted. I just handed it off to Bill tonight. We'll run through that and we'll fine-tune that. Also part of tonight is to get the public's comment. So the people in this room, the people at home watching, you can also send the comments, and all my info will be up here later. I said it earlier, once you become certified, so once we go through this process, we submit the report to the state. State certifies us, we become an MVP community, or Douglas, I should say, becomes an MVP community certified. That makes us eligible, or excuse me, the town eligible for action grants. Oops. As you can see, this slide here shows the state. The white is a non-designated community. The light blue is either going through the process or is about to be certified. The dark blue is, excuse me, I had that backwards. The dark blue is going through the process right now and will be certified, or hopefully by the end of the year. And the light blue is communities who are already certified. And this was updated in September. Since then, there was a whole other application round, or RFR. All those grants were recently awarded, or excuse me, are going to be awarded tomorrow, I believe, is the day that they will be awarded. So this map will be much fuller. So this community-driven process, Bill Cundiff took the lead on that. He led a core team along with myself, fire chief, DPW, highway, water, PD, group of like 6 of us. We met 4 times. We met 4 times, and it was mostly logistical things. Who do we want to invite? Where do we want to have it? When do we want to have it? What are the pros? What are the cons? How do we get the most robust room full of people to that meeting for the workshop? There was 24 people there. A handful of municipal employees. There was also private building business owners. There was, is it DCR? No.
Yes.
DCR was here. Okay, I didn't want to get that one wrong. DCR was here. There were contractors. There was the senior center. There's quite a very broad and wide range of people. So when we're thinking about it, we don't want to think about this as like an emergency management style thing. This is more climate resiliency, right? So how can we get everyone involved? The objectives of the day, were to define the extreme weather and climate-related hazards, which we did. We came up with 4 of them. It was extreme temperatures, flooding, or I should say, drought, heat, flooding, winter storms, and wind events. So those are the 4 natural hazards that, as a core team, we kind of went through the process of what do we think is going to impact the town the most. Thinking out like 100 years, right? How is everything going to change and what's going to impact us the most? Then we were in the workshop as a group we did the same thing, but as a larger group of roughly 25 people. So in those meetings, or part of that too, was to prioritize action for the community to broaden their resiliency. So that sort of came in the afternoon, right? In the morning, we spent a lot of time thinking about what do we have, what features do we have, what are we missing? All those kind of questions came up. The afternoon was a lot of what can we do about that? How can we build upon what we already have? How can we improve what needs improvements? And that's pretty much the same thing. So these were kind of the three categories that we worked in. We worked in infrastructure. So what are the features in Douglas infrastructurally? What are they in society? And what are they environmentally? And with that being said, I kind of already said this, but I'll say it again. The 4 hazards that we came up with while we were working in those categories, we were thinking in these climate. What's the right word for that? But thinking of the natural impacts that we're going to be facing in the future, potentially. So once again, drought, wildfire, flooding, wind events, and winter storms. Did I skip one? Oops, sorry. Didn't mean to do that. So another thing that was talked about during the day, we had identified all those things, and then we talked about what is coming, what's going to be coming in the climate. And we were thinking 50, 100 years out, right? So one of the things that came up was heat projections. It's projected by 2050 to be somewhere between 8 and 20 more days, 29 days of 90 degrees or above heat days, if you will. I don't know how to say that the best way, right? So say now we have, between 5 and 20. In roughly 30 years, we're going to be having 8 to 29. And then we look out to 100 years, that's going to increase to 11 to 69. Right? And at first glance, it doesn't sound like much, but if you think 69 days in the summer, that's basically the whole time the kids are off school, right? That's like from the last week of June to the first week of August, it's going to be over 90. That's very impactful when you think about it. Another thing we were talking about was with the heat, that's going to bring changes to the forest, right? So it's going to change the landscape. It's going to change the forest. It's going to change the animals. It's going to change the ground cover. It's going to change the canopy cover, right? We're thinking, if we look to the left here, you see some oaks and pines and some other trees mixed in there. But then when you look to about 80 years from now, it's basically all maple birch, right? So the diversity of the forest is going to go away. The whole other thing that goes along with the diversity of the forest is that root system, right? The trees are always connecting to each other. Town administrator brought that up during the workshop too, right? A lot of things are happening under our feet that we don't even think about on a day-to-day basis, right? So that whole communication system is going to be thrown off. Yeah. So then rainfall, kind of the same thing, right? When we're thinking about the projections going out, this is a graph showing greater than 2 inches of rain in a storm, right? Right now, we're between, we're going to have storms that are somewhere between 2 inches and a half an inch. When we get out to the 100-year mark, the 2100 mark, we're going to be closer to storms that are pushing over 3 inches regularly. What are we going to do with that extra inch of water? Where's it going to go? Where are we going to put it? Winter storms, it's going the opposite way, right? It's going down. So this is a graph showing a minimum day below freezing, right? And the importance of that is when we think about hard frost. We have a hard frost, the ground stays the way it's going to stay frozen throughout the winter. If we're going to have warmer and colder days, high and low, and it only gets below freezing for a couple of days, we're going to have the hard frost. What's that going to do to the infrastructure? What's that going to do to the ground? What's that going to do to the frost heaves? What's that going to do to when we're thinking about building buildings? Where's our frost line now? How deep is it? How shallow is it? What effects does it have on a larger scale? Right. So we threw a lot of information out there. We got our brains thinking in very different ways. Oh, I got one more. We just talked about that. Okay. So after we talked kind of about projections, right? What are the climate-related hazards that are going to affect us? What areas are we going to look at or work within? What are the projections looking at? Now what are we going to do, right? So we broke out into groups. We broke out into groups of four different groups, have between 5 and 8 people at each table, including CMRPC staff and scribes. Within those 4, we use those 4 focus hazards, so those were the nature-related ones, the 3 focus sections, which were infrastructure, environmental, and society. And we had all kinds of tools and resources. I don't know if the people at home can see it, but I think they will at some point. We used these matrices over here, wrote on them all over the place. We also have maps of the tables. Where we could also identify things, circle things that aren't as easy to articulate. So I guess I kind of jumped ahead on myself. But once we broke out to the groups, we used these matrices. We identified those 4 hazards. That was kind of the first thing we did. The second thing we did, or kind of as the day went along, in the morning, we broke each group down, right? So that infrastructure group, that societal group, that environmental group, and identified what does Douglas have, right? Douglas has culverts. So then out of that came some problematic culverts, some culverts that are working perfectly, right? They just need to get cleaned out, all those kind of things. Societally, we were thinking about the adult social center, right? What services do they have? What do they not have? Where can we reach to them for help? Oh, I'm losing my words here. For assistance with, action grants, right? There's going to be different needs there. So trying to think about every different place we can go. Environmental runoff pollution came up. Another part of the day was thinking about where are these features, right? You might think the senior center, well, that has a physical location, it has an address, that's an easy one. But what about like septic runoff? Where is that? That doesn't have an address. It doesn't have a place that you can just say like, yep, that's the address. So that's where the maps came in handy, where we could draw a circle. This is a concerned area, right? Over here leads to this, goes down the stream. You can see a lot of different things where maybe something that's happening over, on the east end of the town is somehow going to work its way to the west end of town, like through the rivers and streams and brooks. So location was kind of a hot topic. Another topic was ownership. At first glance, it might seem easy. Well, it's just publicly owned. Sometimes, in some cases, it wasn't, right? It was a public-private ownership. It was a public-state ownership. It was 100% state ownership, right? Also thinking about, is it a vulnerability or a strength? So how is it helping or hurting the town? Is it doing both? Does it help us in one area? Does it help us infrastructurally but hurt us societally? I'm not saying that's true, but that was part of the conversations. What is every side to the coin? And what's in the middle of the coin too? Right? What's in between there? So that was the morning. That was the morning part, was a lot of identifying the what's, the where's, the who's, the why's, the how does it help us, how does it hurt us. That was mostly the morning. The afternoon was more thinking, forward thinking. What can we do? Right? What can we do? And in some cases, what can't we do? Right? We went through, we prioritized all those actions. Right? High, medium, low. So this is something we really want to do. This is something that is in the middle, right? And this is low priority. That doesn't mean that something takes more precedent than others. Like a low priority might mean this is kind of business as usual. We're going to make sure we keep doing this, right? We're not going to let this slide off. We're going to keep it on the plate. We're going to charge forward. And then a timeline. It's kind of a long-term plan, a short-term plan, or an ongoing plan. It might even be a project, right? So you could think, in the short term, we're going to do the study, but the long-term project is to replace the bridge. Just making stuff up, but something along those lines, right? That's how we can think of that. After we did all that work, that's when we got to the part where each table summarized what they found. So each table reported out the who's, the where's, the what's, the why's, the how's, how did it get in the way? How is it a problem for us? How is it something we can easily fix? Is this something we really want to take on, right? And each table did that. And as each table reported out, there started to become some connecting lines, if you will, right? There were some similarities. I actually brought this with me tonight too. I don't know if the people at home can see it, but while we were reporting out, we were just sticking everything together, right? Things start to overlap. I think you can see trends. North Street, right? That came up a few times. The bridge, the stream, the apartment complex next to it. A lot of things started to be connected, even though they were working over here, they were working over here, right? It's very similar things started to come out. At the end of the day, we took everybody's matrix, we basically wallpapered the whole back wall with all kinds of information, and everybody voted. You can see there's one lonely sticker on this one that doesn't take anything away. On the next matrix here, you can see there was something, the Gilbert Pond wetland improvement, right? So a lot of people were voting for that. So that was another part of the process. All of that combined brings us to the report, brings us to this listening session, and brings us to the point of what everybody is actually kind of concerned about. What are we going to do now? Right? So what did the group find? And taking those 4 tables, putting them all together as one large group, and coming up with what did we actually find. So I guess we can start with the infrastructure concerns. I guess you could say the umbrella, right? Kind of catch-all. Culverts and bridges were a big one. Water services was a big one. Tree management was another one. Dams, municipal facilities, and stormwater management. Inside of the culverts and bridges, it was the Whitten Reservoir Causeway came up a lot. That was mentioned a lot. Wall Street, North Street, the North Street Bridge, those all came up, in the Mechanic Street Bridge. Those are concerns, right? So this is kind of, if you think back to what we were just talking about, this is early on in the day. We're just kind of identifying, what do we have, right? What do we have? Where's the problem? Water, it was limited coverage, and aging infrastructure is kind of the idea of why that was brought up. Street trees and tree maintenance, 2 kind of different things, right? So we have trees on the street that are going to cause all kinds of problems if they get too large, right? We have these 150-year-old trees, and they're starting to decay. When they fall, now they're in the road, they're in power lines, all kinds of stuff. Tree maintenance is thinking, how can we prune the tree to keep the tree healthy, right? So there's kind of 2 parts to that. The dams is 20 regulated dams in Douglas. The Whitten Reservoir Dam and the Wallace Pond Dam were 2 that were mentioned the most. And municipal facilities is on there, and that was just due to kind of aging buildings, right? It's not that the municipal facilities are falling apart and we don't have any, and we need to reestablish everything. There's just some aging infrastructure, right? Something to be concerned about. So then, like I was saying earlier, there's 2 sides to the coin and stuff in the middle, right? You can see right off the bat, municipal buildings. This is a strength, an infrastructural strength. Yes, maybe the buildings are aging. We don't have brand new, public safety complex and a brand new town hall, right? There's aging things going on there, but all the services are there, right? Everything that you need as a town is there. It's happening. You can come get those services. Those services are being provided for you. Public safety, full-time staff, police, fire. We can also think public safety too when we're thinking climate change wise, right? We can't forget about DPW, can't forget about highway, can't forget about water, right? They're all providing public safety in some way, shape, or form. It just doesn't look like it's not the same uniform that you're used to seeing, like badges and things like that. The public water system. There is a public water system, right? There's wells. There's public water provided to individual households, right? So that's a strength. There's pros to that. DPW I mentioned. Okay, so the infrastructure actions. I'm gonna try to summarize 8 hours of work in a slide here, right? This is a bit of a challenge, but I think when we think about the big picture, a lot of this will make more sense, right? So some of the high priority actions were the culverts and catch basin upgrades, right? So we want to upgrade those. And when we're thinking of upgrades, it's not just say, well, the pipes rotted out on the bottom, we're just going to stick a new one in there. It's trying to think larger than that. Can we have a 3-sided box culvert? Can we make a box culvert out of this? Can we bring this stream that goes I don't know, I want to say the road's going this way and then the stream's going to make a hard 90-degree angle, run under the road, and then go back the way it was going. Is there a way to redesign that culvert to let the stream pass through naturally, right? Then we don't create that bend that creates a dam when debris get in there and then we have flooded roads. It's kind of thinking like that. North Street Bridge. So then water provisions, the potable and emergency water, right? The potable water we have to think about, if we're thinking we're gonna have longer, hotter, drier summers with higher intense rain, right? The ground's gonna be harder, the water's gonna run off quicker, it's gonna go to the stream, it's gonna go away, it's not gonna naturally flow into the wells, right? So what are we gonna do about shallow wells or wells drying up, or where else can we get potable water from? Is there ways to extend the public water service to other privately owned homes? In the emergency water, we could think dry hydrants, right? Douglas, as a strength, has a lot of water, right? Kind of as a vulnerability, we have too much water when it rains, right? So it's that fine balance, and that's that two sides of the coin. So is there places that we can use the natural resources to help prevent wildfires, right? With those drier, longer, harder summers. Another thing I was thinking about is possible fire ponds, right? Maybe we can't just dig a hole and put a fire pond in the ground, but maybe there's a way to create some kind of ecosystem in its secondary use when need be is a fire pond, right? So is there ways to get educational pieces around that fire pond? Is there a way to create habitats in wetlands and floodplains? Is there a way to connect the aging population with benches and signage for education on trees and flowers and plants and frogs and bugs, right? Make it ADA compliant. So can we take kind of a simple thought of dig a hole and fill it with water in case? Or is there a thought to like actually think it out, have a longer thought process? How can we encompass everything that the town needs or would like to have or would want, or somebody from some area in town could potentially use this, right? But it's a fire pond. The electrical grid, just upgrading that electrical grid, right? Because it's once again, it kind of goes back to that longer, harder summers. What is that going to do to the infrastructure? Now everybody's got an AC. The town buildings have an AC. Everybody's plugging in fans, right? What is that going to do to the integrity of the electrical system? How can we upgrade that? How can we think of other ways to reduce that strain as well? Energy efficient, is there alternate energies? Can we run the public water pumps off of solar power? Can we run the water pumps off of, wind generated power or some other alternate source that maybe has not been invented yet? Those are kind of the highlights I think that will strike everybody. Some of the societal concerns. So we're kind of going to go through this kind of piece by piece. So infrastructure, societal, and then environmental. The societal concerns. Senior residents came up. The flood-prone neighborhoods was kind of a big one too. Community preparedness and insect-borne disease. All right. I think I'm going to start I'll start with the flood-prone neighborhoods, right? So Hayward Landing, the Cottage Colony, and Wallam Lake Terrace. Those are kind of things we're thinking. Where are we going to be concerned about those flooding issues, right? Who's living there? The senior residence just presents challenges all on its own, right? Because now there might be transportation issues. There's also that heat factor, right? Do they have what they need to stay cool? Do they have water services? Are all those things in place? Let's think about that now versus when the time comes. The community preparedness. So that's just zooming out a little bit more. Is Douglas as a whole ready for what's to come, right? And that's thinking back to that infrastructure strain that we were just talking about. If everybody's plugging in everything and running everything at full blast, how can we prevent that as a community, right? Thinking community. And the insect-borne diseases, I thought this one falls in two categories. It falls into the societal and the environmental. And I thought this one got people thinking very different ways and thinking about different things. So this was one I kind of wanted to highlight. Everybody probably remembers the beginning of the summer we had the Triple E. A lot of things were shut down because of it, right? A lot of after-school programs, parks are closed, a lot of things like that. Do I have anything else on that? Nope, not yet. We'll get more into it. Oh, this slide. So when I was kind of thinking about who's living where. This is just a pretty basic little, just shown by census block groups. On the left is the percentage of renters in town. It's roughly 33 to 58% are living in that East Douglas neighborhood. And then on the left-hand side is populations over 65. And you can see that a smaller percentage, it's saying from about 9 to 15, 13, is over 65 and potentially a renter, right? So you kind of have that two demographics blended together. So that presents a lot of challenges too. Something to be aware about, something to think about. Okay, so the societal strengths. Community came up so many times in this town. Right, I was really excited to hear the community. Thinking about the East Douglas neighborhood, the Hayward Landing, the Riddle Book, the school systems, right? The Adult Social Center. What's happening over there? How can we pull them in? How can we as a town go to them and find out what the needs are there too? And the Jenks store, that's just providing us with some historical foundations, right? So what's coming out of that? When we're thinking about vulnerable populations, that's not, I don't think, a term we should look at as a good or a bad term, right? That's just saying that here's a population that may be a renter, maybe non-English speaking, maybe over 65, maybe under 18, right? So there's all kinds of different things that work with that. When we're thinking about that, three big things that came up, kind of in the umbrella, was outreach, engagement, and participation. So it's kind of responsibilities on both sides, right? When we think outreach, it's, well, we posted the meeting, we did our job, right? Is that enough? No. So then you have the engagement. Can we go to the place where the people are versus making the people come to where we are to engage, to have that conversation? That could just be a one-on-one meeting. I'm not saying that town meeting is going to be held, on the common. I'm not speaking for the town. I'm just saying there's a lot of talk about how to engage with people. And then at the end, the tail end of that is kind of the participation, right? So that's the two-way street, right? That's getting the participation of the town with the youth, the senior center, the passerby, the person who is just kind of, they live here, they work somewhere else, they come, they sleep, their kids go to school, but they have a life, right? How do you engage with those people? How do you participate on both ends, right? That was a big thing that was talked about during the day. Also part of that was kind of on the medium and low priority. That's not to say anything. We're thinking about religious and spiritual, right? Same thing, participation, engagement, right? Versus just straight outreach. But also on the flip side, if the place of worship doesn't put it out to the town or put that outreach out there, the town might not know that it's happening. So if we can have this kind of back and forth, right? We all have to kind of play together, live together. But the big thing, the insect-borne disease. Touched on it earlier, and it was kind of, the conversation was like, well, everything gets shut down, right? We have to worry about this disease, we have to do something about it. We can't just let everybody do their thing. But then it was kind of like stepping back a little bit. Well, what about the kids, right? The kids, they want to play baseball, they want to play basketball, they want to play football, they want to go to cheerleading practice, they want to have football, right? Everything they want to do, I shouldn't say everything, but you hope that they want to do some things outside, right? But if you say you can't go outside after 4, what am I going to do, right? And then thinking the other way too, as a town. What do we have as a town where we can provide those resources, that recreation or that play and all the things that build a child's future? Where do we have those things in town where we can provide those services? Like, I don't think we can realistically build an indoor baseball facility, but possibly. Maybe there's a batting cage, right? Maybe we can scale it down a little bit. Maybe there's an indoor shoe-only kind of hockey team or recreation thing, something like that. Just like thoughts. This is what was happening all day. And trying to put all these thoughts together is what we're trying to do, or we're putting it back out to the community tonight. All right, so environmental concerns. Once again, we see insect-borne disease, right? That's now we're removing it from that recreation side. We're thinking about it environmentally. Runoff pollution is another one. Brownfield mitigation, forest maintenance, and nuisance species.
So we're thinking insect-borne disease, we don't want to just get stuck in the triple E, right? Because that's present and close and easy to grab. We also want to think about Lyme disease. We also can kind of lump into that insect-borne disease as invasive species, right? The moths. The longhorn Asian beetle just came back up in Auburn, right? So we have to just kind of always be aware, be looking. Sorry, I lost my place here. Forest maintenance. This kind of goes both ways. So that's in the forest, making sure that we don't have those invasive species, or we're doing everything we can to remove them or mitigate them. And at the same time, we have debris management. So we're lessening the impacts of that wildfire. Right? If we're at longer, harder summers, we have more stuff dying, falling on the forest floor. We're just creating more fuel for the fire. Right? So kind of thinking, what's the maintenance programs? Right? What are we doing about these things? And then runoff pollution. So runoff pollution was kind of thought of in multiple ways. Was kind of thinking like through the neighborhoods, solar farm runoffs, the waters from runoffs, brownfields, and then septic runoffs. Right? What's coming off the street? Where's it going? What's coming off the solar field? Where's it going? That might not just be like a pollutant to the water. That could be mudslide, debris, rocks, all kinds of different things can come off the solar field if it's on a hill next to the road. Brownfield, so that would be a lot that's possibly contaminated, right? So thinking about where is the water that's going across that land, where's it going? Where does it end up? Where does it run off to? And then septic system runoff. Where do we have septic systems on the hill that can end up in water? Right? Thinking about things like that. What's this one? Okay, so some strengths. Kind of, this is more open spacey thinking, right? The forested land is a great environmental strength. Once again, other side of the coin. We have wildfire, flip it over, we have a place of recreation, place of shade, place of habitat, place of ecological existence. Insects, bugs, animals, plants, all kinds of things happening. Oxygen, clean the air. A million good things are happening out there. Water resources, touched on a little while ago. A lot of water resources in Douglas, right? Rivers, streams, brooks, Wallam Lake, a few ponds, right? So that's the other side. When we think flooding, we also think, well, we have all these resources too. What are we going to do about it if we have too much water? So thinking in terms like that. Open space kind of is catch-up, right? Where do we have places for recreation? Where do we have places like open space like a soccer field, open space like Douglas Woods, right? Not just the DCR land, but throughout the town of Douglas, right? That's an open space. Farmlands. How are we thinking about these lands? Right? These are strengths, so we want to keep them around. So environmental actions. Once again, kind of a catch-all for some of these. Investigate the bylaws, right? So let's take a look. What do we have on the books? Right? What's on the books? What did we as a town decide that people can and can't do? Or builders can and can't do? Or where are we sending the water? Right? And thinking about that whole septic runoff and fertilizers. What are we allowing people, farmers, private residents to put on their lawn? Where are they located in relation to a hill and a pond or a stream, right? Because what you put on your land is going to end up somewhere else too, right? It doesn't just stay within the bounds of your property line, right? It all goes somewhere. The natural resources protection and management, it's kind of what we already said, right? What are we going to do to keep the trees healthy? We're going to try to prune them. What are we going to do to keep the rivers clean? What are we going to keep the ponds clean? What are we doing about the invasive species that get into the ponds? Right? How are we going to deal with all this stuff? What are we going to do moving forward? The open space and recreation plan, I kind of just touched on that in the last slide. That's what are we doing to preserve the space that we do have. So versus like, well, it's great for revenue, we'll just build a Mall of America in the state forest. Right? That would solve a lot of wildfire problems, but that would bring in all kinds of other problems too, right? So think about, how do we preserve this land that we do have? The waters, the recreation facilities, the trees, the forest, all of those things. So that's kind of what we came up with. There isn't one fix for everything, But that's like where the ideas went, right? And moving forward, those will be refined. Those ideas will be polished. Some, like I was saying earlier, will be done relatively free, right? Where it's something we can read the bylaws, we can change these. It's going to take some work, but it's not going to take millions of dollars. Some other things might take a lot of money, like the North Street Bridge, to redo that whole bridge and kind of that whole area where it becomes a downtown kind of development type of project, for lack of a better term. Now you're talking a very long-term project with a lot of different moving pieces, right? So there's all kinds of things that still need to be sorted out. So kind of the next step for Sir Douglas is to finish that draft report. We at CMRPC will continue to draft it. We'll keep developing it with Bill and his core team. Once we finalize that or get it close to a final draft, I was thinking we might put it out to public comment for those that couldn't make it tonight, so you have a chance to really get in depth, read what was there, right, and provide us with a little bit of feedback. We're going to submit that by June 30. Everything goes according to plan. Douglas will then be an MVP certified community. That's going to allow the town, to apply for those action grants, which should come out of some of the things that we talked about tonight. Hopefully there's things in there that will be refined and move forward through the action grant process. With the action grants, potentially a next round in the early spring, that could change. That's not a promise. That's just looking back to what has happened previously. It's up to $2 million for an individual community, right? So that's a pretty large project to take on. The grant cycle is typically from June 1 to June 30 from what we've seen in the past. You can do a regional project. In regional is interesting, right? Because when you think of regional, sometimes we just get caught up by boundaries. Who's my neighbor? Who's north, who's south? But when we're thinking about this program, it's nature-based, right? We've been talking a lot about nature-based solutions, green infrastructures, things like that. We have rivers, right? Who's connected to the river? Maybe what's happening 2 towns up is really affecting what's happening to me. How do I work with that partner? How do I build the upstream river? Or kind of undo that passage river? The person south of me drove me crazy, so I'm going to build a dam and they don't get any water anymore, right? Kind of, how do we play nice with everybody? Upstream, downstream, even in the water, right? So think large when you think regional. Cut that. And there is a 25% match that can be cash or in kind. What was I going to say? Lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. Well, maybe I'll get refreshed. I'm going to open it to questions, comments, concerns. Give my brain a break. Or you guys can bring it all back, make me think extra. I know there's a pretty big information dump. I know there's a pretty large group that was here that day. Maybe they have some feedback that we want to share. Maybe not. Throw it out there. Try.
I think it was a good exercise to get us to think outside the box and sort of gel a bunch of minds from all different demographics of the town. So
I would agree wholeheartedly with it. I want to say, attended, I think 8 of these workshops. And I do think that in a larger picture, it's getting this group of diverse people together. We typically don't sit in the same room, right? Or maybe we do, but it's a conversation about kind of a microscopic topic. Right? We're kind of hyper-focused on one thing. Whereas when you bring all these people in the room, now we start talking about these wide range of things. And then somebody always throws a wrench in it and says, well, what about this? And then all of a sudden you have 5 other people who go, oh, I never thought about that. Or, no, I thought about that a lot, but I've never said it, and I'm going to say it out loud now. Right? And then it gets the conversation going in so many different ways. And when we think about outside of the action grant process, right, where we want to get the money to solve the problem, there's everything that's happening now, all these relationships that were built throughout that day. Right? And those conversations, the business cards that got exchanged. Or it was, I didn't know you were working on that. Like, that's my passion project on the side, and I want to run with you on that. Right? So all kinds of things came out of that night. Chief brings up a great point. So thank you, Chief.
I didn't know there was as big a beaver problem as there is.
And that too. No, we all learned something. Right? We all learned something. Kind of get caught in that tunnel vision, right? We go to work, we come home, we have our own things that we're dealing with. kids, this, that, what's for dinner, you know, who's getting groceries. You get caught up in your own little world, and then you don't notice the beaver dam over there, or you never go this way because that's out of your way to go home. So you don't see the giant swamp that was created by that beaver dam, right? So it's a great exercise, and I think it's only going to help the town improve moving forward. Anybody else? No? Okay. Tough crowd. But here's my contact information. So anyone that's at home watching, feel free to reach out to me with any questions, comments, concerns. Call me, email me. I'm fine with it. Any questions and comments that do come back, we will incorporate those into the report. So you at home can be a part of the process too. And I guess with that, thank you.